This is David with Corel Training.
This is Cassie Green from Apparelist.
This is Gordon and Firemark from the Entertainment Law Update.
And you're listening to
Two Regular Guys podcast.
Hosted by Terry Combs RG, Regular Guy, and Aaron Montgomery.
The place to be for industry news.
the best dad jokes on earth, along with relevant topics to apparel decorating.
Prepare for the ride.
All right, welcome into the show. It is Friday, September 13th, Friday the 13th, 2024. I'm Terry Combs. You can find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm Erich Campbell, very obviously not Aaron Montgomery, sitting in for him on his birthday. He is off for the Big 5-0, doing a cool educational thing for himself. So let's all wish him the best and hope he's getting some good education and more things to bring back to share with y'all. But today, I'm going to be kind of picking Terry's brain and speaking some truths about the need for standard operating procedures for continuity and how to avoid the dreaded single point failure in your business. So if you ever found yourself lost without a key employee or getting calls on vacation, you're probably going to want to stay tuned for this one.
Yeah, I think only Aaron would say, what do I want to do for my 50th birthday? I want to go to a seminar in Los Angeles.
This might be true. I mean, love him for it. But yes, this is very likely.
All right, be sure you stay till the very end for the secret sauce. Eric's serving up something special with a bit of business about the value of specialty threads and embroidery, and why do they make sense for your bottom line?
Yes, indeed. And unfortunately, we have our outline maybe a little out of phase. I think we're going to go ahead and run our news. We usually do news before the dad joke. But if you watch us follow the outline, you got to know we've got Terry coming right off of Pretty United. We've got me coming off of some late work nights. We're going to do our best, but it might be a little bit fuzzy today without Aaron. Hey, one of those things about going on vacation, my man. Sometimes you have,
I had that late night flight last night after tearing down the booth. And hey, I don't want to take too much credit because our techs are still there, loading machines. And So I will take credit for a couple of hours of trying to get everything down to floor level so they could put it in crates. But when I left, there were no crates to be seen. So I hopefully they got them before midnight last night. I haven't talked to anybody yet.
Oh, man. And by the way, as somebody who's run a booth before, all the love to everybody who was there breaking down late. All the love to the people who were packing up trucks and getting it off the floor. That is a massive amount of work. And definitely all the love to people who organized Printing United, because I've heard good things. I had the FOMO really bad while you guys were doing that stuff. So very much want to give a lot of props there. But we have a guest fresh from Printing United. We're going to go ahead and do our news segment. And today we've got Cassie Green coming on. So you ready for doing the news?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Cassie just yesterday at Printing United in the booth for podcasts, just talking to people and doing all kinds of things. And so she's probably coming in a little bit like us, a little tired, a little worse for wear.
It's always energizing, but your eyes a little tired at the end. But let's go ahead and bring Cassie in and give her a chance to talk about some news. And everybody be extra kind and give all those thanks, because you got to really appreciate all the stuff she's been up to. So yeah, let's get on with the news.
Well, yes. Good morning, you guys. Yeah, Eric, when you said fresh off Printing United, I was like, fresh is the right word. Yeah. But thank you so much for having me. And thanks to everybody, all of our sponsors, exhibitors. We had a phenomenal expo. I, like Terry, took a pretty late flight last night, so I hope that I can get through the news. But luckily, even though it's Friday the 13th, I have some really good feel-good news. So that should, quash any bad luck vibes anybody's feeling. So first headline, Sanmar launches backpacks to benefit American Red Cross and American Cancer Society. So Sanmar Corporation announces the launch of 2 charity tech packs. Sales of the packs will benefit the American Red Cross and American Cancer Society. Sanmar will donate $5 for every pack sold to the associated organization. The offering makes it easy for companies, teams, and groups to choose a product co-branded with a highly regarded national charity for a built-in charitable giving message. This is all according to a company press release from Sanmar. The charity tech packs were designed in lockstep with Sanmar's commitment to prioritizing sustainable products by utilizing durable, ballistic, and recycled polyester materials that can stand up to the versatile needs of the end user. So really exciting program there. Second headline I have for everybody this morning, World Emblem and Heroes Pride join forces to serve first responders. World Emblem announces the acquisition of Heroes Pride, a company that produces emblems, badges, and gear for first responders. This asset purchase marks a milestone for both companies and makes room, for new products that will serve those who serve us, as an announcement from World Emblem states. Sorry, guys, I know I'm very tired. I'm trying. World Emblem says the acquisition of Heroes Pride feels like the perfect next chapter in its journey. Since its founding in 1981, Heroes Pride has become a staple in law enforcement, public safety, and military communities. Their extensive product line, including over 10,000 SKUs and more than 40 million items sold, have helped law enforcement professionals across all 50 US states and Canada stay safe, look sharp, and represent their roles with pride. So really cool, exciting partnership there. Final headline I have for you this morning. This is Printing United related, but also something very exciting. So Printing Industry Inclusivity Guidebook released at Printing United Expo 2024. Industry veterans Jed Seifer and Vince Bartozzi with Stakes Manufacturing, Patrick Bardsley and Tim Howe with Spectrum Designs, and Marshall Atkinson with Atkinson Consulting have teamed up to author a guidebook championing hiring people with disabilities in the print workforce. The authors debuted this book at Printing United Expo 2024 in a pretty big way. So the book is titled Inclusivity, very fun, I-N-K, Inclusivity, Company Benefits of Disability Inclusion and How to Implementation Guide for the Print Industry. The book aims to open business owners' minds to what is possible when you focus on people's abilities instead of disabilities, and help them see the path to creating an opportunity for someone with disabilities who might be their next best employee. So the guidebook was actually discussed in a panel in the Apparelist Live Theater. There was a really cool Meet the Authors event in our Knowledge Center at the Expo. And then Jed did join our podcast to talk a little bit about that. So we will release that podcast sometime in the coming weeks as soon as we get the footage and can do all of our editing and things like that. So those are the headlines I have for you guys this morning. Thanks so much.
All right. You know, I talked to Cassie at the show and she said, yeah, I'm going to come on live. I'm like, really? You don't have to. You can record something. But speaking of the inclusivity guidebook, Jed is just a super guy. And you know, of course, he's been on Two Regular Guys before. But I remember watching him on a panel a couple of years ago. And it was, you know, in today's world, you know, finding employees and everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's really, really hard. And you know, all these things about retaining your employees. And Jed was the last guy on the panel. He goes, they're everywhere. There are all kinds of employees. There's no problem hiring employees. You have to be willing to work with people and hire people with disabilities. And he was like, what do you mean? They're everywhere. There are all kinds of employees available. So awesome. Hats off to Jed and the folks also at Spectrum Graphics. I chatted with them at the show. It's same type of company and opening another location in Florida. So you know,
I also have to say, the Spectrum lately, I've been following them on social media and I'm resharing, reposting some of their TikToks. And I think that if you are not following them, you need to be. They're showing some inclusivity tools. They're showing people at work doing what they do best. And if you ever needed convincing, they're absolutely out there walking the walk. So you got
to pat ourselves on the back a little bit here, Eric. When I was talking to both the guys from Spectrum, they said, we have to tell you something. When we were on your show about 7 years ago, it really turned our business around. It gave us a perspective like we're legitimate decorators now. And you know, it made me feel good. and to be a
Mm.
part of their success as well, a very, very tiny part. So, I want to share that with you.
Oh yeah, like I said, the community that we bring together here is the best thing about what we do, and I'm really happy to have had a part in that at all, even just to be a witness to what's going on and to amplify that where we can. And by the way, one more thing before we finish out, all those awesome feel-good stories. Thank you again, Cassie, for coming on. You did great. Don't feel bad. There's like one little stammer. Cassie's like, I'm trying hard, guys. It's like, don't feel bad. We're all feeling the struggle, and you did awesome. She always brings these great stories, and I especially love when we have these days where it's like, it's not industry drama. It's the stuff we do best, stuff we bring ourselves together to do. And that was just such a great bunch of headlines. So thank you again, Cassie.
Yeah.
All right.
And Aaron and I, by the way, we did record Aaron did some interviews. I was working in a booth, but Aaron did some interviews at Printing United. And he and I did go into the podcast booth and do about 20-25 minutes kind of reviewing the show on the first day, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so we'll be putting that on the air here in a couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk to some of the regulators we have here, people who are showing up. Chuck showed up early saying good morning. Good morning, Chuck. We got Kristen coming in saying good morning. Ramona in early saying good morning, guys. Barb coming in from Minnesota Custom Made. Good morning from North Central Minnesota. People talking to each other, which I love that. When I see people in the comments who know each other talking, I love that too, because that's all about that kind of community feeling we bring around here. And of course, Ramona says, give her our heartfelt thanks for her being here and tell her to go take a nap. We'll let her. I fully agree. Everybody deserves that rest for sure. And somebody we may or may not know, Kim Johnson, also saying good morning. So good morning, Kim. See here
also too. Working very hard at the show.
Very much so. So what are you doing here?
One of those shows where you barely have time to grab a 10-minute burger and then back to the booth,
Yeah, we've been there. Like I said, wish I was there this time, but we've definitely been there before. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on through. You guys know what we're usually here for. We couldn't be us if we didn't do the dad joke. I mean, it's got to happen at some point, and this is a pretty good one. I like this one. Now that's dangerous if I like one, but hey, you got to enjoy them where you can. So are you ready for the dad joke?
Yeah, for all of our viewers,
Yes.
I'm sure that you will see Aaron do a little translation here. So
yeah, there might be a little translation today for sure. All right, let's go.
All right, I'm ready. So, Eric, did you know that Spider-Man has a winter jacket made completely of flatbread?
Completely a flatbread? No, I didn't know that, Terry.
Yeah, it's a pita parka.
Oh.
For our podcast listeners, Peter Parker, Pita
Spider-Man.
Parka.
So for all of you incredible nerds out there, yeah, that was a good one. Like I said, I caught that. I was like, oh, that's actually new. That's one where you're like, we've heard a lot of these jokes before, but this one was actually new to me. I chuck a little bit. I'm like, man, I must be tired, or Terry's getting better. But that was a good one.
I was pretty proud of that one.
I like that one.
All right. Before we dive in, we want to thank everybody. Whoops, I didn't silence my phone. I apologize.
That's all good.
Want to thank everyone for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. We still need your voices. We would love to have you participate in our show intros. Go to decorators.ink/intro. Read a few sentences. Be a part of every show. Don't be left out. We are always looking for new guests. So if you or anyone you know would like to be a guest on the show, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys to book a future episode, or email us at info@tworegularguys.com with your show ideas. If you are listening to the podcast version of the show, we would appreciate you sharing the Two Regular Guys podcast with all of your industry friends so they can become regulators too. And we would appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcasts, YouTube Podcast, wherever you do your podcast listening, we are there. And if you're watching us live, we need your help, literally. Join in with your comments and your questions.
All right. Well, we have some people in. We'll go ahead and read the comments. There's always a little bit of churn after the joke. So Amy says, ouch. Yeah, I know. That was a good one. That stings a little bit. The dad joke cannot be without that bite. Come on, that's what a dad joke is. And of course, Ramona agrees. She's laughing. She's rolling on the floor. All right, so I'm not the only one who just nerded out and thought the Peter Parker joke was actually worthwhile. That was good.
There are people out there going, I don't get it. What are they talking about?
There's been enough Spider-Man movies rebooted 4 times over. Everybody knows Peter Parker Spider-Man. It's not nerdy really anymore. All right. But before we get going.
And Stan Lee,
Yes.
just about every character in Stan Lee comics have names that are like Peter Parker. They're the same letter, first name and last name. If you go back and look, which is kind of odd.
Alliteration. Weird guy, but kind of a cool guy. But yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I want to get a chance to just really quickly before we go on to our topic. I know we've got a little bit to talk about there and Secret Sauce coming, but Printing United, man, like. Let us know what are the highlights for you? How did it go?
Yeah, it was buzzing. It was busy, and lots of folks there, lots of activity. Let me start down in the apparel zone. That Cassie was a huge part of putting that together. So Eric, for anybody who wasn't there, the apparel zone is an education area. So if like equipment zone, we had a booth in another part of the hall. Epson, who we partnered with in the apparel zone, they had a booth about 2 rows over from equipment zone, but it was full education. So in the equipment zone Epson booth, it was all DTG, and so Kim Johnson from Paisley Joe Designs and Jay Bassell from Equipment Zone. They were down there, and there was no sales talk. It was all just demonstrations, talking to people. And I think people were very relaxed there, asking their questions without getting some level of a sales pitch, American Print and Design was down there. M&R was there. Obviously Stalls is always at any educational area. Stalls is there. And there were others as well. But the whole area was set up like 1950s, 1960s Las Vegas. So like for us, our storefront was a record store. And so you walked into the booth through this hallway like a street, and there was a 1960 something 63 I think Cadillac there. Nice. in the street, and so there's a record store and there's a souvenir shop and all these different things like that. So everything was themed and very cool, very very busy, and so that was a lot of fun. But here was my big takeaway, Eric.
Yeah,
there were lots of companies introducing new products at that show, and that you could say whatever you want about the economy. You can watch CNN, you can watch Fox, you can watch ABC, NBC, CBS, and they can talk about the economy. But a sign for us in this industry was the fact that all these new products are coming out, and anybody who's been in any industry for any amount of time knows that when the economy is down, everybody sits on their hands. This happened in 2008. This happened during COVID. There was nothing new. It was like, let's hold fast. Let's not invest any money in development. Let's sell what we've got. Let's hold on for the ride. And all these new products were coming out. And and on the other side of it, with all the attendees, serious buyers, people coming there to buy equipment, people coming there to buy new technology. That says that every one of those people at that show who was there to buy thought, we've turned the corner. It's time. We need additional equipment. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to expand. And it was inspirational because of that, so.
Wow, that's awesome. And I have to say, hearing kind of the buzz not being there has been very similar. I've heard a lot of that coming on. And this is the thing I kind of gauge too. I'm always surprised to see which shows have lots of people who are new to the business, who are looking to build in or who are expanding into a new segment. And there was a lot of that. As an educator, I know, as you know, around these shows is when we get a lot of mail. We get a lot of contacts. We have a lot of people asking us for things, a lot of people looking for classes, looking for educational stuff on whatever they've just seen. And I got a lot of that just kind of in my inbox as this was going on. So I think that it's an indicator that this show is certainly not only well attended, but that people are looking to invest in themselves and in equipment. I can see that coming. So that's really awesome to hear that on the ground it felt that way.
Yeah, and I don't want to miss anybody, so I won't say, but I had multiple people come up to me and say, "Hey, I listen to your guys' show every week."
Love it. I love it. That's always the best. It's always the best.
So we always like that. And Eric, for also this show, most of us do, Impressions Expo in Long Beach and this show and that show. But for a lot of the larger decorators, this is the only show they do. And so the only show that they attend. And man, I heard a lot of, I've been thinking about this for the last year. I'm ready to buy new equipment. And it was certainly motivating. And Aaron and I, didn't get to spend as much time as we would like. There's the show. There's also then the events after with your vendors and your customers and this. Of course,
yeah.
And Aaron and his wife Kyleen kind of shot out of there yesterday afternoon. So I guess so you wouldn't get sucked into, hey, you want to help me take down this backdrop here?
Right.
But I think that the folks at Printing United, first of all, they need to have a pat on the back for putting on a really great event, and they have to be thrilled. They have to be thrilled with the results.
Awesome. It's awesome.
I heard no negatives from anybody, any vendors or any attendees. So it was a tremendous event. And another thing that not to belabor the event, but also in the apparel zone, they had a whole theater area. And that's where all the presentations were taking place. And, Equipment Zone and Epson together did a panel discussion, myself and Tim Scheck from Epson, but then actual users were on the panel. We had 6 people on the panel. Awesome. And the room was packed, completely full. And then people were standing out in the hallway, outside the doorway, listening in. So,
you can't get better than that.
Yeah, all in all, a great event. And I'm thinking at lunchtime today, I'm going to take a nap too. Hopefully, Kathy's already asleep.
Well earned, I'm sure, after all that work, both in the booth and outside, my friends. So yeah, kind of good to hear all that going on. I mean, I know you were really getting into it in the apparel zone, and I'm absolutely happy that we had that great representation there, and especially to hear that you had that panel of users. There's nothing quite like the not only the social proof of having other users doing things so people can really kind of feel, hey, this is not part of the pitch. This is not part of somebody trying to, look down and tell us stuff. This is on the ground, but that you bring people in, they get a chance to also share. And I think, like we found out, we talked about Spectrum earlier, that's also a big deal for people who are up there. That really helps them to kind of both legitimize and solidify the way they do business. I think it's always awesome to see that.
100%. 100%. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it went really well. And once again, congratulations, folks over at Printing United and, of course, Apparelist and everybody who put everything together. Love to hear how great it went. And also, hope I get to go next time. I'm sorry, the FOMO is getting serious.
Next year is Orlando. So
I got to try, man. I got to try. It sounds like I'm really missing out.
Those Orlando shows, and I've done lots of different shows in Orlando. The thing about for we vendors, you got to be there and be on your game in the morning, because in the afternoon, everybody brings their family and they go to the theme parks.
Yeah.
The afternoon every day. The place is just empty at lunchtime.
It reminds me of some of the shows we've done where we've got a really big football game going on and suddenly all the display TVs turn to football at a certain hour of the day. And you're like, okay,
hey,
well,
your machine operating on that machine earlier.
I was like, there's probably not going to be any more sales for a minute.
Yeah, Impressions Expo in Long Beach, one of the only shows that actually goes into Sunday, and it's always during the playoffs.
I know. that I remember very distinctly. All the TVs slowly turn into football.
Well, and all the attendees leave too, because they're watching the playoffs.
Yeah, always. All right. Well, see, that's the thing. We got to talk about this. I'm going to try and segue in the least elegant way I can. See, sometimes people are gone when you need them. See, continuity in your business. Let's talk about standard operating procedures and stuff like that. We'll get into the topic for a little bit before we get done today. Why not? But here's the thing: though we don't need a lot of prompting, this is a topic with which I not only have a lot of experience. I think all of us in the operations part of this world do, but kind of a ton of thoughts and opinions that I developed over the years. As we've talked about before, and I'm going to say the quiet part out loud as I sometimes do. When I used to write a lot of articles, some of those articles, in fact, a good portion of them weren't, hey, this is what I'm doing right all the time and why you should do what I do. It's, hey, this is what we should have done and why I don't want to do what we did last time. So that's how I feel about that. And I'm going to explain one term that I keep on throwing out there. And I've had people ask me what I mean by this if they haven't heard it before. It's haunted me throughout my career. The single point failure. So this is something that I have a tendency to do accidentally, is become the single point failure. What this is in terms of an employee, when I talk about having a single point failure, it's someone through whom all of your business runs. Where it's like there is some portion of every part of the business that only one person in your shop knows about, knows how to do, has the access to the tools for. And so when they're gone, or if they, God forbid, leave your company, which they eventually will if they grow, or if they are sick or, hit by a truck, then suddenly your business grinds to a halt. And that's the SPF, the single point failure. And I have a tendency to go, I can help with that until the point that I have drawn everything through me in a company until I become the single point failure. And I know there's people out there who are kind of go-getters who do that. This is why we need standard operating procedures, not only for consistency and stuff, but the thing is, standard operating procedures also mean that if you're cross-training, other people can take over and follow the procedures and learn. So there's two things we talk about: continuity as far as like making sure things always are done the same way. But the other part of the continuity is being able to hand things off and have it get done the same way. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I just had to define that because it's like every time I talk about it, it's like, all right, I'm like, single point failure, what does that mean? I was called that by a boss and was specifically called out and said, Eric, stop doing everything for everybody. Because anytime you're gone for 5 minutes, we can't get anything done anymore because you're the only one who knows how to do X number of tasks. This is something that we often do also to ourselves as people who are either solopreneurs or maybe you have a little bit of somebody else who's helping you. If you don't have any way to hand things off, even if you're outsourcing stuff and you don't have a way that information gets processed or a way that jobs get done, you can create that same kind of failure point or just not have a lot of consistency. So I know this is something that, it's not like it needs to be beaten into the ground like I just did. But I know, Terry, you've done a lot of work helping people with production. Do you see people doing this pretty frequently? I mean, I know a lot of bosses do it to themselves too. I mean, how do you feel about that?
For sure. And it's so funny you said that about the articles. I don't write articles based on what I do right.
Yeah.
I have I always tell my screen printing classes, this class is based on decades of me standing in the middle of my production floor going, there has got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a more efficient way to accomplish this. There's got to be a way that people don't continue to trip.
Oh, I think you muted out for a second there, sir.
That is very strange. Yeah, I did.
There you go. Mic's back in.
Okay, yeah. Weird. Yeah, it popped up on my screen. It appears your microphone is unplugged. Really?
I think we lost you at a trip for a second there. There's got to be a way people don't trip. And
yeah. So trip over the same issue over and over again, and so, it's kind of funny you say that too, because I would, when I was in Kansas City and I had 75 production floor employees. So, so if anybody wants to hear every reason I can't come to work, I know it. I've heard it on the phone. but I would sit in management meetings, I was production, and then we had procurement, we had accounting, with the president of the company, and there was some big issue happening, and I'd just be scribbling notes away, and the president of the company would go, "You're writing an article about this, aren't you? And I'm like, I am. But you're not mentioning us, are you? No, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say who. This is gold, man. Just keep talking.
You just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, don't keep doing what you're doing, but do keep telling me about it. No, and my thing, honestly, people may not know. A lot of people think I owned all those shops that I worked at. I did not. I was not a shop owner. I was an employee, guys. So the thing to understand is, though I got high up enough in each of these departments where I was running chunks of a department or overseeing other people, I was not the owner. So a lot of these were probably my wishful thinking, like, here's a list of things I wish my owner would read. Here are the articles that I'm going to put on his desk and go, see, I did another article, sir, and hope that somebody reads it so that someone who's in charge will let me change something. I mean, that's always a thing. But that's...
It's funny you say that because I had a sales rep at NASDAR. NASDAR, when I was in Kansas City, NASDAR, their headquarters is also in Kansas City. And my rep from there invited me to breakfast one day, and so we went out to breakfast and we're talking about, you know, different things about the industry, and all of a sudden he whips out Impressions magazine and lays it down in front of me. He goes, "This is me, right?" No, it is you, man. But I didn't say it was you. But clearly, you recognized yourself in this article.
It's like if the shoe fits, my man, you probably got to put it on.
we definitely had a good laugh about it. But but yeah, you know, you're completely correct in that. A lot of things flow through one person, and you know, sometimes it's an owner or a senior level manager.
Sure.
I was doing a consultation once, and I was talking to all the production folks, and I'm like, why are you guys like last minute getting art done? Why are you last minute getting screens burned? And they were like, and I'm like, because I'm trying to piece this together. The orders are over here. The orders come in here, and you guys are scrambling every day. And I'm trying to figure out why the big scramble. Yeah. Well, the vice president of the company, who's one of the owners, wants to review every order before. And so I went into his office. And I said, "Hey, I understand you review all the orders before they go to production." And he goes, "Well, yeah." And he pointed at one of those little desk folder things, you know, and it must have been 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, I need to go through those." And I'm like, do you need to go through those before anybody can do anything? Or could they just send you a copy? "Oh, yeah, they could just send me a copy." And I'm like, everybody was afraid to ask him for the orders. And so I was like, okay, here's the deal. Order entry. 1 copy goes to production. 1 copy goes to the VP of operations. And it was like a weight was lifted off of them. But, you know, it's for all the employees, that's the way it always had been. That was their standard operating procedure. We're just in crisis mode all the time because of this. And all it took was to say, "Do you just need a copy?" "Oh, yeah." You know, so for anybody that's hiring consultants out there, people like myself and Eric and Aaron, we're just going to point out very obvious things to you. So Eric, I've written this article a couple of times, and we've probably talked about it.
Sure.
Be your own consultant.
Yes, absolutely.
Take a day off and go to work and just walk around and watch how things are being done. And what made sense 10 years ago that doesn't make sense today. And you could save yourself, I mean, thousands of dollars to me and Eric, and
sure,
you know, more power to you. There's not a shop out there that doesn't have room for improvement. And that's not saying anything negative about anybody out there who's listening. There is room for improvement in all things, right? I mean,
always. Well, it's like the Kaizen kind of attitude, right? A little bit of improvement all the time. It is worthwhile to do. But that's the thing. Like when we've talked about SOPs, standard operating procedures, before we get too far, and I'm not going to go back. I think we have some points we were going to cover. I think we're just going to talk because we're hitting all these points as we go. But one of the things that is true, if you don't set standard operating procedures, if you don't know what those are, that is just the way you do things all the time, but codified, right? Made into, I like to literally have a document. I think it's good if you literally have a document because I've been in most of the shops I worked in, never did. And then when you go back and do it, because I was going to talk about flow charting later. Everybody thought I was a geek because I flow charted our shop. And when I did it, though, I noticed all these loops. And I'm like, oh, man, we are going back and forth in these loops over and over. And it was only when I drew out the flow chart, I followed a job all the way through the shop and through everybody who had to touch it and what had to happen. And we kept on having what I call reversions, like that would go back again to this department. It would go back in a loop and have to get checked twice here. The job kept on going back up the chain in a way that it really never needed to. But if you don't check that stuff out, the funny thing is if you never examine it yourself, if you never write down a procedure, the procedures will build themselves. People will fall into a pattern. They will come to a consensus. There will be a standard operating procedure. You just will have no control over how it works. You won't know exactly how it works. And it may or may not be functional or efficient. People will fall into a pattern. It's a lot better if you can actually make that pattern thoughtful and make sense to you and not have it constantly, like I said, ending up in these cycles of people checking on things or going back and forth to a person for reasons that even the person who's doing the check doesn't know about or why they're doing it, or doing tasks that just go nowhere. That was the other thing. I found branches that died where you're going through the flow chart. You're like, there's no reason somebody's making a copy of this document that's going to a person that never touches it. There's, it's like all this wasted labor that could be pruned out, and tons of these times where it's like, okay, it got down to the production floor and back to sales and then back to production and back to sales and purchasing and then back to production again. You're like, there has got to be another way for, like you said, for us not to continue going back up the chain all the time to try and find out what's going on. But that's the thing. There is that dark side of these SOPs. Even if you write them down, even if you make the document, if you don't check them out once in a while, hey, technology's changed, tools change that you might not be aware of, but maybe you get to implement something new. You might also just find that you chose to do something early on that doesn't make sense at a certain size in your company or in one segment. You'll also find that what works for in the embroidery department isn't what works in the screen department because the processes are different. They really are quite different, and they don't have the same needs sometimes. And there's also different levels of involvement between the different departments depending on that chain. So it's one of those things where it's like, I weigh on people to say, think about these SOPs, think about your procedures and write them down. But it's not just because I think you need to have a big, 3-ring binder that everybody's carrying around, or you have to have a big Google Docs thing that everybody is pelted at and has to go through and take tests on to make sure they know. That's not it. It's more that you need to examine it because a lot of what you originally do, you probably won't do after you've examined it. And then number two, that when you do want to train somebody new, even if you don't have employees right now and you're eventually going to have employees, knowing what you actually do and where to define it, you won't be doing this thing where you're constantly discovering as you try to teach somebody. I've watched people do this. They bring in some new employee and they're walking down the line going, oh, that's right. Oh God, no, wait. No, actually we got to do this first. And they don't even know the process because they've just been doing it intuitively for so long. And that can, but like I said, even when you write things down, that can be the dark side of it. You can get complacent and not think about the why. You don't even think about the why. Over time, it's just, that's what we did. We put things over on this shelf over here because that's the first place it was empty 10 years ago for whatever. And now we go back and the shelf is messy. We don't know why it's there. We're walking across the room to this magic shelf and there's no reason to store what it is, make the copy of the document, or, do whatever sort of sampling or checking. There's certain things that aren't necessary. And then other things where we're consistently finding mistakes that we could implement something in that spot that fixes those mistakes or causes us to, evaluate the process.
Well, yeah, when you say that about it made sense at this point in time. I was when I do consulting, or when I used to do consulting, I just kind of follow people around and what are you doing now? What are you doing now? How do you do this? And I remember, and I've talked about it here in the show before. But there was an art director, had 10 artists, and I'm like, so they're delivering film positives to the screen department, and the art director was writing basically, the customer name, the order number, how many films in this book?
Yeah.
And then she closed it up and put it on the shelf, and there are like 10 of those books up there. And I'm like, so you record everything that goes out? Yeah, so we can keep track of what got delivered to the screen department. And I said, who takes these books off this shelf other than you when you write this down?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, no one's ever taken the book down. And I said, oh, okay, I want you to stop writing down all this. I just want you to stop right now. And here's what you run into with these situations. She like panicked. I have to write it down. This is what we do. And I'm like, I want you, I've been given authority as a consultant here to streamline things. I want you to stop writing that book. And she turned around and disappeared out of the art department. She went to the president's office saying, hey, that guy said to stop recording, all the films that go out to the screen department. And he goes, why do we do that? And she's like, I don't know. And he goes, well, I think you should do what he says and stop writing that down. I mean, it had to save her hours a week from just writing this stuff down. And
yeah,
I have another point, believe it or not, Eric. Also, I've got into shops where they'll have order packets, and they're like novellas. I can say that with you and me, novellas. And so what I did is I went to each department and gave them a different color highlighter, and I said, I want you to highlight what you use in this packet. And so about 80% of it wasn't highlighted. And so I went back to the order entry department. And I said, hey, next time you send a packet out, only put on it what's highlighted here. Yeah. And again, they're like, but what if somebody needs to know this or needs to know that? Well, clearly they don't need to know that. But if they do, don't you have that information if they need it? Well, yeah. Okay. So stop doing that.
Yeah. In fact, it kind of brings up a point I was going to make later. When I talk about workflow and standard operating procedures, one of the ones that people are surprised that I kind of champion this so hard, and I've taught several classes on it. It's about informational workflow. They're like, oh, you're the embroidery guy. You're going to talk about sampling and art. I'm like, yes, no, absolutely. Art approval, sampling, all that's super important. In fact, that's all part of the informational flow. But I'm always surprised at how poor we are at communicating information and also delivering what the next department needs. And so one of the things I've tried to teach people is treat what your department does as a product that you're delivering finished that meets the needs of the next department. So that the likelihood is, hopefully, if you're doing it right now, I mean, there's always little reversions, especially in the world of like art approvals and stuff like that. You do have to go back and forth between departments. There's some of it where you can't avoid it. But in general, if you're handing something off to production, you should be able to walk out of the building, get hit by a train, disappear like DB Cooper, and that job gets done. Like, it doesn't matter what you do after that. If you're in sales, if you're in the art department, when you hand it off, once everything's approved, it should really not need to come back to you. Now, don't get me wrong. There's going to be art people who need to approve strike-offs for first prints, for color, stuff like that. Sure, that's true. But other than that, especially in the embroidery world where colors are determined by thread numbers, we know what colors go where by the time we're done. It really shouldn't need to go back to the art room. It really shouldn't need to. So what I always tell people is, hey, instead of thinking of this as, oh, part of the process, it's kind of fuzzy, you go, no, I'm going to deliver the thing that my department is necessary for. As the digitizer, I need to make sure that the file is where it's supposed to be, that all the information for the running is there, and all the production, including things like stabilizer, thread, and any other procedures that need to get done that might be different than anything else we do, positioning for it, anything else that is about the way the garment needs to look that the production people would ask, I'm going to deliver in my informational packet. Now, of course, these days it's all done through, central information systems of one kind or another. But if you imagine it old school, like the old job jackets, we used to pass around literal envelopes full of materials. That envelope should be able to carry someone right on through production all the way to the end if they need to do it. They shouldn't have to keep talking to you about it. It's not that we can't do that when it's necessary, but like you said, it's more that you're like, oh, if they really need that information that's not normal, can't they ask you then? Not every time. And on top of that, the thing that gets me crazy unhappy with some of the people I've dealt with, they're like, oh, they come and get me when they need to find out what color to change it to if there's something new. And I'm like, why would you do that when you could just record it? And on top of that, recording it, we talked about consistency. Recording the things you do, at least within your department, to some sort of central information system, means that you can go look it up. Anybody can go look it up without it being a part of a necessarily producible. But even at the same time, doing your own kind of QA on what your department is supposed to do should be part of that. And thinking about that informational flow, it should be kind of flowing downhill the whole time. Every time we have to carry the water back up the hill, we have to think that's extra effort, and we have to reduce those loops a little bit. And I think that's part of why, for me at least, standard operating procedure for me has always been at least partially about that informational flow, because I think that, for me, most production people do their production job well.
Yes.
It's not mistakes in the technical part of it. Once they're trained, if they can make a good thing once, most of the time, as long as their information is correct, they're going to make a good thing, whatever it is you're making, forever. It's when they don't have the information, they have the incorrect information, or they can't find someone who's supposed to check in on that information at the last minute. That's when mistakes happen. It's almost always information.
And you know, when you say that about when mistakes happen,
oh yeah,
the opportunity to correct that mistake gets more and more distant as the order flows, because because the mistake is made here. The next step, somebody goes, is that right? It probably is. The next person says, is that right? Well, it has to be right because it's already gotten this far. And the last person goes, this must be right. You know, I don't think that's how you spell Missouri, but it's gone all the way through the department now.
Oh, and I have to say, I really credit Terry with this, because this is something where we always joke around. I give somebody credit the first time and then never again. Terry gave me the best thing. I always talk about my finishing department as like, those are the people who are the last line of defense. Like, those are people. But what it really kind of gave me is this concept when Terry said that, like, no, people who are putting stuff in the box, that's your last chance to make an experience for that customer, and they should be empowered. And here's a big thing. When we're talking about procedures, when we're talking about workflow, whatever it is, if you don't empower your employees to say something when they notice it's wrong and tell them that that is not only not going to get them in trouble, but is the desirable outcome. Yes, I know it sucks. It is the worst thing when the employee goes, oh man, that's 50 of those and they are all wrong, and we are going to eat this job. I have been there. I've been the employee who messed it up and the one who caught it. We've all done it. Over the lifetime of your career, you're going to do it. You should always empower employees on the ground to tell you what's happening, to give you feedback on procedures, and by all means to say if something's wrong and not hide it. There's nothing worse than finding the third thing in a stack with the wrong color when you're showing it to a customer. There's nothing worse than finding a misspelling in a name or a department because your people were too scared to say something, or just said, well, they approved it, and then wash their hands. I'm like, no, that QA should be at each stage. And especially those people who some people think of as like, oh, those are my lower level workers. They pack boxes, they whatever. Those are your last set of eyes before the customer opens that box and it curses you if something's wrong. So you got to empower those people.
You know, Eric, if there's no other takeaway than empowering your employees, take that away from this show. Empower your employees, and you know, when I start a new and like yourself, I owned a business way back when, but after that, I was just managing departments, you know, for the rest of my career, and when I would go in as the new production manager, new plant manager, and people would come and say, hey, we've got this problem. What do you think? And it always started with, well, what would you do? Well, I would do this. Well, okay, let's do that. And then they'd come back again. And what would you do? Well, I do that. And then they'd come in and say, hey, we got this problem. Here's what I think we should do. And I'm like, I think that's a good idea. And then they just stop coming. because he's just going to ask me what I think we should do. I guess we should just do it. And I'm like, good. So I remember one time that I went on vacation. I came back and one of the owners almost put out a little bit. He goes, you know, everything ran like clockwork while you're gone. It's like you didn't even need to be here. I'm like, you're welcome. And he's like, well, you're welcome. And I'm like, well, when I got here, it was chaos. Could you even go on vacation when I got here? And he goes, well, no, not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. Now you have an entire
Yep.
staff of people who make good decisions because we trust them to do their jobs. And
huge.
business doesn't have to be hard. Production doesn't have to be hard.
No.
You have to trust people. And there, we're in a world of micromanagers where I have to make every decision. And that means when you're not there,
Yeah.
everything grinds to a halt at some point because everyone's afraid to make a decision. And you know what?
Huge.
As a longtime production floor manager, sometimes I get kicked in the butt because somebody made a decision that I probably wouldn't have.
Yep.
But and we're going to have a conversation about it now. And here's, we'll talk about it. And I appreciate the fact you made a decision. Here's why I'm having a little issue with it.
Sure.
But I still want you to make decisions. And we talk through those things. But anyway, I could ramble on forever on this, Eric, as could you.
Absolutely. I think we'll kind of do a quick wrap up. I will say this: whenever we talked about getting employees really motivated, the thing I always talk about is this AMP, autonomy, mastery, and a sense of purpose. This is SOPs help with that because you can let people be autonomous, but have in the background, if they really are concerned, they can go to the SOP and say, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And at least get a guideline. But giving them a little bit of autonomy gives them that ownership over their job. Discussing stuff with people and saying that what we're here to do is get better gives them a chance to get mastery over their own part of this job. And then saying to them, hey, you're here to make this better. We want to make the company run better. And if we all do better, we're all going to do better in general, kind of making sure everybody's compensated. That's purpose too. It helps with purpose. Can't just be making money, but it can also be, we're here together to be the best shop we can be. And you're part of that. That can be part of that purpose, as well as we talked about earlier in the news, when you have an overarching purpose like inclusivity and helping people have jobs who have disabilities, or when you have something even more than that, if you have a social purpose as part of your company as well, it makes it even more, part of that. And that ownership comes from that autonomy we're giving them. I mean, that really is important.
Yeah,
you can't overstate it. But last thing, I have one little question for you. Give you a minute on it, and then I'll do a little bit on it, and we'll just kind of let that go for the topic. But if someone wanted to start doing standard operating procedures, what do you think is kind of the first step? Where would you want somebody to start?
I think I would start with notating step by step. And my junior yellow legal pen. I would go step by step and what we're doing now, step by step. And maybe it's exactly how we need to do it. Yeah. I would probably follow that up with, and I think all our listeners should do this on Monday.
Yeah.
Buy pizza and ask every one of your employees while they're eating pizza, what can we do, or what can we change, or how can we make your job easier? What's one thing that would make your job easier? And who knows more about the production process than the people doing the production process? And you might be very surprised at what they say of what would make their job easier, what would make the product flow easier or better. So
absolutely,
you're a 1 minute, and then off we go.
Yeah, I'll say my last term on this one is because you guys know I also did a lot of e-commerce, and I work in software now. We call it dog fooding. Eat your own dog food. What it means is go through your own process, do an order from start to finish, as someone who's on the outside. And yes, I mean pay. I know it's going to mean that your credit card gets dinged for a processing fee that you're paying to yourself on the way through. I don't care. Do an order from absolute start to finish, including paying for the order. Even if you give yourself a massive discount, we want to know everything that happens as the order from the customer side, from the outside. And then while you're doing that, also follow it through on the back end. If you do that, you're going to learn more about your business than you ever did. And like I said, in the e-commerce side, it also shows you how your website actually works. When you're building it, it makes sense to you because you built it, or you're working with the people who built it. When you come back as a customer and run through it, you're going to see all the failings and flaws that are wrong, that you can work on that process. So the same thing on the outside is on the inside. Eat your own dog food, go through the entire process from start to finish. And as Terry said, document it. He's absolutely right. I would be in the same boat. That's what I would do too. But I'm going to say abstract it one level out and do the same thing with the ordering process, so you can see the way that interacts with the customer.
I love it.
All right.
All right. So, Eric, since you're
Yeah.
doing secret sauce, do you want to tell us what you're up to here, and then I will do mine and Aaron's.
Absolutely. Number one, I'm just going to let people know once again before I stop talking about this last week. I'll talk about it. Check out my latest article in the Apparelist. Take embroidery the extra mile of special effects. Head over to theapparelist.com to see the article. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the link in the comments. It's all about techniques to help your embroidery stand out. I'm going to talk about specialty thread in a minute, so that's part of that. So go ahead and check that out if you get a chance. It's a good little article, and a lot of people have really been enjoying it. So go ahead and do that. We also have I had a print another thing I did for another podcast, did a separate piece on Let's Get Printing. So it's the podcast over at Deco Network with Zach Dewhurst. So check out the Deco Network social channels. I believe it's still the latest episode they've done. I talk about basic tips on embroidery and digitizing, and Zach, who also has come into embroidery from being a printer, talks about his experiences too. So that's another great one to check out if you're not getting enough of me every week talking at you. And last but not least, we're into the next 100 episodes with the Take Up. So episode 201 is today, and that is Cap Embroidery Challenges Revisited. So we're going to go back to cap embroidery. I actually haven't talked about caps in a long time. It's something I did a lot of in my career. So catch up with me to talk about cap embroidery and design. But I'm also going to talk about some different stuff, not just the digitizing and embroidery stuff we all know about caps, which I am going to revisit. But I'm going to talk about some differences I've seen dealing with mixed commercial and prosumer people making caps. So it's some interesting kind of observations about people who are using different kinds of equipment and materials and the kind of stuff that they encounter. So if you get over to erichcampbell.com and click the Take Up tab at the top, you'll get to my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to check out the live today at 2:30 Mountain Daylight Time.
All right. Very good. Well, my next screen printing business course, complete screen printing business course, I'm going to be at my workhorse class is going to be, I'm going to take them out of order because we just settled on a date. My next class here in Phoenix is going to be November 16th and 17th. And my class in Chicago at Atlas Screen Supply is October 12th and 13th. I'm going to be talking DTG and DTF printing at Impressions Expo in Fort Worth, October 24th through 26th. And watch for all my upcoming events at terrycombs.com. For Aaron, happy birthday, my friend, at your 50th birthday here on a Friday the 13th. And if you read my book, Beer, Bait, and Barbecue, Friday the 13th is very significant to our protagonist. Aaron's celebrating a big milestone in his notes here, Friday the 13th. He says, I'm blessed to get to work with so many business owners. In October, we're hosting Fundamentals Live, an event designed to help business owners gain clarity, find fulfillment, and build businesses they truly love. And you might think I'm going crazy, he says, but I want to offer a special opportunity to attend the event at a price that works for you. Simply cover your travel, food, and lodging, and then choose a registration fee that fits your budget. This is deeply meaningful to me as well. It's a $1,597 value, and you can choose any amount from $0 on up until next Friday. It's osg.link/birthday.
So that's today that runs out, folks.
Today, yeah, exactly right. And also, he says, join the OSG Facebook page.
Yep.
It's a Facebook group you will want to be in. Lots of great perspective, questions, and discussions about more than just surface level stuff. All right, folks. Ready for a little bit of secret sauce?
Yeah, man. Secret sauce is good. I think it's always good to get to it. And this also, like I said, has to do with some of the stuff we talked about in the articles recently. And, there's always room for a new thing in our procedures.
Awesome.
All right, folks. So it's time for the secret sauce. And today we're going to talk about why we should spend on specialty threads. So what do specialty threads do for people in the embroidery world? So specialty threads can be much more than a chance for embroiderers and digitizers to engage in creative experiments. They can change the way you address designs, expand your catalog of looks and solutions to increase value for you and your customers. Used properly, they increase not only versatility, but the prices you can command, and without drastically increasing your investment. Why do they add value? Number one, sure, they stand out. So the thing I'm going to say, specialty threads, the way we define these, most of the thread that we're using is polyester. It's usually 40 weight thread, and it usually has a high sheen. But there are all of these options for thread outside of that. All of it is usually done. All of our embroidery, especially in the commercial world, is usually a similar thickness, coloration, surface quality. Threads that stray from that norm catch the eye. Metallics, thick threads, fuzzy threads, threads that have a matte finish all catch the eye. Commercial embroidery largely deals with promotional products, and so seeing as even the most mundane logo still has that function of promoting or identifying a brand, the end goal is almost always garnering attention and conveying a message. No logo is meant to go unseen, so that even the least contrasting tone-to-tone design communicate a message of that professionalism of that brand. Even that message is, this is the logo and the company behind it is subtle and confident. That can still be a message. And the thing is, we can have more language to promote that message if we use these different threads. Promotional products are poorly executed. They can't bring attention to the brand or message they're meant to convey. And embroidery absolutely is no different than any other promotional product in this way. Specialty threads help to get those designs to break away from the standard mode of decoration without necessarily having to do a redesign. You can often swap specialty threads right in for existing threads with very minor changes to your execution or your digitizing. It increases both the actual value and the perceived value you can deliver. And I think that's the thing that you might not think about specialty threads. It's not just the look and the sheen. It can also be the way that those things work. The thread actually has a job to do. So we're talking about actual value. An offering can provide measurable utility to your client. For example, fire-resistant threads maintain the safety of the wearer. Less critically, matte finish threads might have a really high resistance to UV fading, meaning that you can do outdoor installations or things that are meant to be outdoors without fading and damage. These are absolutely measurable things. Less frequent need for replacement or extra protection. Easily demonstrated benefits are great to sway your customer to buy your product over one that lacks that utility. The thing is, some specialty threads might even be imperceptible to your customer, like a 30 weight versus a 40 weight, a slightly thicker thread, but it reduces stitch count, and it means that you can deliver either faster or cheaper, or just make it more efficient for yourself, providing actual value for your shop by increasing your efficiency, which you can leverage for increased profitability. The more subtle one is perceived value. And perceived value is when something has a higher perception of value to the customer, they believe it is worth more than another offering, regardless of the added utility or the investment on your part. For instance, if you use thin threads that allow for crisper details and smaller lettering than your competitions, it makes your work look different and likely cleaner than theirs. And thus, it can seem to have a higher value for a client that prefers those precise renderings of their logo. If you master the use of metallic threads and can provide a shiny, glittering effect that your competition didn't think to offer, the perception of rarity and cost causes your work to stand apart and look expensive. You can produce decorations that look handmade with fuzzy threads or thick threads. They can appear seamlessly beside an existing vintage decoration without the time or cost of manual embroidery, making it fit into that vertical you might not do if you were using just standard polyester thread. And that means you can command a higher price than the work that is not offered, because you have that extra idea in your customer's mind that not only you can do this creative work, but your shop as a whole is more creative and versatile. And thus, not only your work, but you as a producer have a higher value. Lets them justify paying more for your production than they might consider a commodity price done by a less adventurous competitor who doesn't dabble in any specialty materials. Even if a customer never orders these threads themselves, your shop looks more experienced and more skilled if you show samples explaining and expounding on how you could use these threads in their creative endeavors. Simply because you swapped in less conventional thread, you may increase your profile. So ultimately, this is creative and cost effective. The curse of adventurously creative people in the business is easy for us to do something for the thrill of just making something new or make something cool without thinking if it's good for business. So many of my decorator friends and myself very much included, we find ourselves desperate just to make something cool, to make something new, to make it look different. Luckily, the value proposition for specialty threads is one that I've seen driving real growth in many production environments. Novelty drives the sales almost as much as quality, if not more. And if that weren't enough, many businesses have been become well known for being the insert specialty decoration here shop. And sometimes that can be as simple as learning how to use different materials. With that single outstanding specialty material or process serving as a springboard to further work, both simple and unconventional work alike. If they trust you with their specialties, they often trust you with their staples. So with the relatively inexpensive outlay required to test specialty threads, particularly when compared to the addition of new equipment necessary for most new processes you might add to a shop, there's little reason not to indulge both your creative side and your business sense by exploring the possibility of specialty threads. And that is my secret sauce. All right. Well, that's it. We're back to the close of another show. I think I'm like the fastest talker in the industry today. Like coffee and will, but I really do think that we should think about this more. And you guys remember we've had Joe Kramer on a couple times. I had him on my show as well. He's got a new gig talking about thread all the time, and he's been really bringing this concept of using new threads and different threads to people out of that retail world into the commercial world. And I can't wait to see more people jump on that.
100%. I tell people all the time, separate yourself from all the other decorators by doing something a little special.
All right. Well, thanks again to thanks to Cassie for joining us today on the head end of this thing. The news is great. And thank you, Terry, for sharing and being here off that long, late flight in the evening. That was really great of you to come back in. And we always love talking shop, but I especially like talking shop with somebody like me who's a process guy. It's enjoyable. And yes, I understood when you said there was a novella on the production garment. I know how that works now.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric, for not only being the show producer and pushing those buttons, but also co-hosting today and putting this show together.
Well, I very much appreciate it. And thank you once again to Aaron. Happy birthday, Aaron. I hope you were having a fantastic day out there. And Aaron was clutch, came in late and did the graphics and stuff for us as we were kind of getting this together. We were all scrambling at the end of this week. So it is a team effort. Thank you, Aaron, for always being awesome and for tipping in right before your birthday. On next week's show, we have Bo Belzer coming in, who's going to join us talking about Condi Systems reopening. So that's some stuff. We had a lot of crazy news about Condi, and then we saw it coming back, the brand coming back. Can't wait to hear more about that.
Absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to that show. Until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Erich Campbell, sitting in for Aaron Montgomery.
And that was the Two Regular Guys.
Here we go. We're out.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/tworegularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/tworegularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, tworegularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.